The Christ hymn in Philippians. The letter to the Philippians was written by St. Paul the Apostle. St. Paul the Apostle. I might have told you about Paul before. Well, I know I have. I don't know if I've told you all the details, but I'll just tell you some stuff again. Paul died in the mid-60s, somewhere in the mid-60s. He was killed during the persecution of Christians under our friend Nero. Remember the fire? And Nero had to blame. So at that time, Paul no longer appears. Paul disappears from history, is not heard from again, and we know he's probably in Rome, is his last location. So there's good, and there's also the tradition of the Church of Rome that he did die there, so they have his grave and his bones. So, taking all of that together, I see no reason to dispute the fact that he died in Rome somewhere during the reign of Nero in the mid-60s. This is one of his writings. Most scholars accept it as authentic, that he wrote this, or at least he dictated it to a secretary. So it's authentically a letter of Paul the Apostle. Not all of them are in the New Testament. Some were written by disciples in his name, but seem to have come from him. Written to the church in Philippi. Philippi in Greece. Let me look at my Bible. Forget if it's in Turkey or Greece. Hoping that it has the. Okay, yeah, it's in northern Greece. Where's my? This PowerPoint's a work in progress too, but I might have included a map. I did. Good. Okay. So up here in northern Greece is where the city of Philippi was. So he's writing to the Christian church in northern Greece in Philippi. Although, well, I should be Macedonia. I once had a student in one of my classes who was Macedonian, and I made the nasty mistake of saying that Alexander the Great was a Greek. Ooh! Ooh, he slapped me down fast. I had to be quick on my feet that time, because it was a mistake. I said he was Greek. Well, but they were speaking Greek in their Greek culture. Yeah, but he was Macedonian. Okay. Because Macedonia is now a country above Greece, and they've had some international cross-border issues with Greece. Greece didn't even want them to call themselves Macedonia. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. And they don't speak Greek in Macedonia, they speak Macedonian, which is a Slavic language. But anyways, so whatever, it's the Greek area. Don't go nuts, so don't kill me, okay? So Philippi is up here. And what I had you read, scholars call the Christ hymn. It is a hymn, a song directed towards Jesus. It's very early. The letter to the Philippians, scholars believe sometime between 54 and 57 AD is when it was written. 54 and 57. Make sure my notes are correct. Uh-oh. Oh. It's not good. Where did I put that? Oh, it's over here. Huh. Oh, 54 to 58. Excuse me, I'm off by a year. Add a year to that 7. 54 to 58. How do they know this? Because from reading his letters and books like Acts of the Apostles, they can get an idea from historical references in Luke's work where Paul was at certain times, and it can actually get close to some of the actual dates, and then they can work in the letters. So 54 to 58 AD, excuse me. So earlier than the Gospel of Mark. Remember, Paul's authentic stuff is earlier than the Gospels. So if he's quoting from a hymn, this hymn is even earlier than Paul. This is pre-existed hymn. Wasted on your people. Wasted. Ugh. Oh, it's warm out. So we don't need to read the whole chapter. We're just interested in this section and the traditions that it has that predate the Gospels, traditions of what Christians were believing about Jesus. So just that first verse, I give you the context from Paul, and then the rest of it seems to be the hymn that he's quoting from. Okay? Start with the first verse. Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, and I give you the Greek underlying and morphe, theou. We know these words, in, morphe. We use this word in English. We say something morphs into something else, transforms, changes. A metamorphosis is a change. Okay? So we know this word of morphing. So morphing or changing form, and theou, of course, from theos for God. So we know this is not a problem for us. Okay? So he was in the form of God. This word morphe, the line over the E just means a long E. That's all it is. Instead of morphe, it's morphe. And it's, anyway, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. I was going to say something else, but it doesn't matter. And morphe is an interesting term to describe Jesus, because the Greek word morphe means like your essential character. Your form is your essential character. What you are essentially. Essentially. In your essence or your substance. So it's coming close to saying that while Jesus is God. Close to saying, without saying he actually is. There's still a distance. Okay, this idea of a morphe, while it does include this idea of essence, essential character, it also carries within it a distinction, maybe even a separation. But Mr. Dunn, I thought the Trinity, the persons, are not three gods, they're not separate. Yes, but remember, these are early days. People use terminology and ways, they want to say something, and sometimes the way they talk, they don't think it's a problem until sometime later someone might question it and say, well, do you mean this? Well, no. Well, but how do you know that? Well, I don't know. And you have to start thinking through the words. But nevertheless, in the form of God, his essential character was godlike. Let's put it that way. Jesus was godlike. Okay, because that keeps this idea of he's divine in some way, but there's also some kind of distance between him and capital G God. Capital G God. The translation here stinks. This did not regard equality with God something to be grasped. That translation sucks. And I don't know why they continue, or in the NAB they have it, in the New Testament. It's not very good. As you can tell if you look at the Greek, which we will. Greek on Thursday, Mr. Mondiello. Good stuff. The words that we have here, everything is okay, except it's confusing how it is translated. The word harpagmos, which they translate something to be grasped, it's not really what the word means. The word harpagmos means like a robbery, thievery, taking something that isn't yours. Yeah, if I take something from you that isn't yours, it's robbery. I'm robbing you. Or taking something that I don't deserve to have. Would be a better way of putting it. Okay? What literally it says, when you translate it more literally to the Greek, it would go like this. Who, existing in godlike form, did not consider it robbery, or you could say did not consider it something undeserved, to be equal to God. Okay? You see it makes there's a little bit more, the meaning is different. When you read this, it sounds like Jesus did not think to be God was something to be grasped. Like he didn't think he was God. You could see that, you know. He didn't try to take God. He wasn't God. But that's actually not what it's saying. It's saying exactly the opposite. That Jesus did not think he was taking anything away from God by being equal to God. So this idea that because Jesus is also God-like, somehow God, capital G God, is diminished in some way. He loses a little part of his godhood, you know what I'm saying? But the hymn is saying, no, that's not. To be equal to God was not robbery for Jesus. He wasn't taking something that was undeserved, harpagmos. Okay? So I want to point that out, because that translation is not a good one. I don't know why they stick with it. But, you know, it takes time for translations to change. This new NABRE, the one I have you using, I've been reading it. I was reading Ezekiel the other day. I was very disappointed because I found a really bad mistranslation where they forgot to say, they forgot the word not, but they forgot in the translation. They actually have the text, the Hebrew text, saying the opposite of what it says, saying such and such when it says such and such is not what is the case, you know? So it reads, and I'm reading it and I'm like, that doesn't sound right, you know? Because the text of Ezekiel is, you know, what is it again? If a just person turns away from his righteous deeds, stops doing good and does evil, then I will punish the righteous person. And it says, like, even if, and this is the prophet, Ezekiel, even if you tell the righteous person that he's going on the wrong path, I'll still punish you, Ezekiel. I will hold you accountable for his blood. And I'm thinking to myself, that doesn't sound like a just God. I mean, he did his part. You know, he did what he was supposed to do. He told the just man, you're doing evil, you're going to die, you're going to be punished by God. So I look at the Hebrew text, and that's where they should have to not, you know, because you did not, Ezekiel, tell the just man. Not even if you tell him, or told him. You see, it's wrong. So I have to contact the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and it's completely wrong. And I checked my other versions, other English translations, other stuff, the Hebrew text, and like, this is totally wrong. So anyways, so beware. Okay? All right. He emptied himself. Okay? He emptied himself, meaning Jesus, not God, taking the form of a slave in human likeness, human appearance. Notice this progression. Interesting, because it doesn't make it explicit, but I'm going to make it explicit for you. That Jesus is like he's up here and then he's down here. He empties himself. He lowers himself into not anymore in the morphe of a God, but now he's in the morphe, same word, of a slave. By becoming human. So you see in nut form, in germ form, in seed form, this idea of the incarnation, this belief that somehow Jesus is a pre-existent divine being or creature, when they haven't figured that out, whether it's created divine or, but somehow he's godlike before he became human. He's a godlike being who becomes human. He lowers himself, he empties himself, and enslaves himself to human nature. Enslaves, what does that mean? That Jesus can have emotions, that Jesus can grow, that Jesus can learn things. Jesus, all the limitations. He takes on all the limitations of the human creature that he does not have in morphe theou, when he's in the form of God. God is not bounded by space or time. God's power is not bounded by anything. Okay? But when, by becoming a limited creature, a human, he does bind himself to limitations. So he's enslaved. That's this idea of slavery. Becoming a slave. And coming in human form. God bless you. When it says human form, it does not mean he was not human. Or he only appeared human. Once again, did they have this fully figured out? No, because some Christians later would say, well, no, he's kind of like a ghost, maybe, you know. He looked human, but wasn't really human, you know. But this is their belief, that he was in the form or the likeness of a human being. Because that's how they found him. That's how they experienced him. Okay? And once again, this idea of humbling himself, to lower himself. And now we have a reference to death, the ultimate enslavement. The ultimate enslavement. God, who does not die, will die. opens himself to the possibility of his human existence ending, which is death, which will happen to all of us. Sorry to tell you. Sorry. You know? But we're all going to die. I'm going to die, God willing, before you, because I'm closer to death. But what are you going to do? You know? I'm kind of interested to see what happens. You know, I don't know how painful it's going to be, but I'm interested to see what happens. I know it'll be sad. Yes, I know it'll be sad. But if I believed it was, you know, there's other stuff coming along, I'm interested to see what that will be like. And what kind of trouble I can cause in the next life. And if I go beyond, I promise you all, I'll pray for you. I'll be looking out for you. I will be talking about you to God. Okay. The Christ hymn, as it's called by scholars in Philippians. Okay, I think I stopped with verse 9. Okay, the mentioning of the cross. Okay. Because of this, God greatly exalted him. I give you the Greek word there, hupsoo. It's not a misprint. Hupsoo, with a long O at the end. Okay, which simply means to lift up. Oh, Miss K-Tel. To lift up to a higher position, just like exalt. The word exalt. K-Tel. From Latin. Altus. My coffee earlier. Luckily, it only really spilled on my notes. No big deal. Whoops. Kind of gross. So I got coffee stained. See, I'm real hardcore, baby. I got coffee stained notes, and I still keep pushing forward, Ms. McElvain. Ms. Harrison, that's total goth, right? Anyways, get my hooks up. Alto in Spanish, alto, to be tall. Exactly, same thing in Italian. Okay, so these Latin-based languages, altus, altitude, to be high up, or the height of something. Okay, so to lift up. Okay. And did I write that down? Or did I write that on another piece of paper? Well, maybe I didn't bring that with me. Anyways, the Greek word means to lift up to a higher position than anybody else. Okay? Interesting. And bestowed on him the name that is above every name. This, the name in your translation is interesting. That it specifies the name, bestowed on him the name, not a name. That's why I have the N capitalized, because it's usually, Jews do not like to talk about God. They usually talk around God, because the name of God is considered so sacred that you want to stay away from blasphemy or stay away from misusing God's name in any way. Certainly the personal name of God is never spoken, which is kind of easy to do. Well, I mean, God does have a personal name. It's kind of easy not to use God's personal name, the name that he reveals to Moses, because we don't know what it was. So it's kind of easy, to avoid saying that. Yes, sir? Yahweh, yes. It was never Jehovah. That's actually a mistake from the King James Bible. I mean, God's name is written all throughout the Hebrew Bible. Okay? And you'll notice, if you haven't noticed, in your NAV, the word Lord is oftentimes in the Old Testament in small capitals. Does anyone notice this? In small capitals. Like small capital letters. You can look. Look. Let's take a look. It's like, it's right there. Any page. What page? Okay. Deuteronomy chapter 29. The book of Deuteronomy chapter 29. I just opened this anywhere, you know. I didn't plan this at all. Chapter 29. It's the 5th book in the Old Testament. Verse 1. Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, "You have seen with your own eyes all that the Lord did in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh." Notice that the Lord is in small capitals, at least in your NA New American Bible Revised Edition. Do you have other versions? Do we notice this? Does anyone not notice this? Because most Christian translations do this. The Revised Standard Version, New Revised Standard Version, New International Version, probably not the King James Version just because it's old. Why do they do this? It's to indicate, and it says this at the beginning, if you look in the front matter, the message from the editors, they explain their translation methodology. They will note this fact that the name of the Lord God is not actually translated. It is kind of worked around by the Lord in small capitals, which means God. They could have done God. Problem is that there's another word for God, and that also appears all throughout the Old Testament. You know, so how do you refer to God? You know, it's kind of confusing. So Lord is the traditional way. If you look in the Hebrew text, the Jews use in their Bible, you will see the name of God written like this. I don't think the Lord wants me to write it. Okay? Remember, I think I might have told this to you before. If I did not, I'm telling you now. Thankfully, the Jews have an alphabet. The Jews developed an alphabet, okay? So it's not like Arabic, where you have to learn all different squiggles. No offense, but they look like, of course, to my Western mind, squiggles, you know, which have various sounds. It's not absolutely the same. But the Jews developed an alphabet. Okay, so you have a letter representing each consonant, but no vowels, because they like to keep things interesting. You know, God forbid it would be easy. No. And they write from, just like in Arabic and other languages, from right to left. Why? I don't know. It's just, you know, human beings are diverse. We do things differently. Okay? So this name of God that you'll see all over the Hebrew Bible, which is translated Lord, but doesn't mean Lord, it's God's personal name, is written with these 4 letters. Each one symbolizes a letter. This is the Y sound. This is an H sound. This is a U sound, also a W. Okay, and this is, of course, what is this? An H. Another H. Okay? Going like that. For us, in our Western minds, so we can see it like that. Notice there are no vowels. Because, as I said, the Jews didn't have letters for vowels. Later, they developed vowels. Like the Middle Ages or something. Thanks. When it was too late. You know, by then they had to know how the biblical text was pronounced through memorization. They actually had scholars who were memorizers, basically, of the biblical text. Wonderful. If you go to modern-day Israel, for some reason in modern Hebrew they do the same darn thing. No vowels. You'll walk around, see all these signs in Israel, street signs, all this stuff with just the consonants, no vowels. You know, so you're looking for a store, and you see the equivalent of this. You know, so is it a store? Is it a star? Probably not from the context. Do they mean to stir? Well, maybe it's a nightclub with a weird name, the Stir, you know? Who knows? I don't know. You know, all you have is this. So why the modern Jews got rid of the vowels again, not helpful in my opinion, but if you're a Jew, you know. And you can tell from the context. So anyways, so there are no vowels, so we don't know how to pronounce this, and the Jews would not have pronounced it anyways. They would never pronounce the name of God. There was only one person who was allowed to pronounce the name of God, that was the high priest, and even the high priest was only allowed to whisper the name of God alone in the Holy of Holies once a year, on Yom Kippur, or Yom Kippur as it's now called. When I was growing up it was Yom Kippur and no one thought differently, but anyway. So on the Day of Atonement, the day of reflection and penance for Jews, that was the only day. Well, there ain't no temple anymore, ain't no high priest, so who knows what he was saying in the temple 2,000 years ago when it still existed. We don't know. And since they did not preserve the vowel pointing in the Hebrew Scriptures, we really don't know. So, what happened? How did we get to Jehovah, which Mr. Willens mentioned? And how did we get to Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, which is a related issue? Well, because the Jews, this practice of saying the Lord instead of, thank you, sir, I appreciate that. God bless you. This practice of saying the Lord in place of saying the name of God, which even if they knew it, you would not dare not say out of respect for the name of God, came from this practice of saying the Lord in Hebrew, Adonai, or Adonai, or Adonai, which means my Lord. Okay, the word Adonai means the Lord, or master in Hebrew. Okay? So they simply took the vowels and just worked them in. Yah-ho-wah, Yah-ho-wah. And when they translated the English in the King James, got Yahovah, or Jehovah, as you pronounce it, Yahovah. And these are the vowels that you will commonly see in a Hebrew Bible. So when you see the name of God in a Hebrew Bible, they will have these vowels underneath it, which is to indicate to the reader to say Adonai, or Adonai, my Lord, instead of whatever this would have been, okay, to skip over it, okay? So that's how we get to this, all right? We don't know. The best scholarly guess, actually, well, it used to be Yahweh. They thought it was Yahweh. No offense, Lord, it isn't really your name. But, hey, I'm your child now through Christ, so I can call my Father by his name, I guess. Yahweh. But actually, there's also a good argument that it was Yahoo. Because remember, this W is an oo sound, that it could have been Yahoo. Possible, with the H on the end for it. Yahoo. But we don't know. It's conjecture. It's total guess, total guesswork, because we don't have the vowels, and, you know, we won't know until we're in the presence of God. Right? So, in the Bible, out of respect for the name of God, following Jewish practice, in Catholic translations, they will still respect the name of God by saying the Lord, writing the Lord in small capitals. There are a lot of Jews, like Orthodox Jews, who will not even write the word God out of reverence. They'll write G-D. Okay, they won't even fully spell out the word God. To me that, I don't know. I mean, to me that's a little bit like, you know, okay, but that's different. The word God is different from a personal name, okay? But whatever. How do I segue this into Jehovah's Witnesses? That's why they're called, if you ever wondered why they're called Jehovah's Witnesses, that's why. Their official name is actually the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. In the early days, they were actually called Bible students. And they would literally, I mean, they would carry phonographs, little phonograph machines with records, and go around to people's house and offer Bible study. And wind up the phonograph and play these records of Charles Taze Russell or whoever, Judge Rutherford, their leaders, giving Bible study and talking, so they were really Bible students. How did it become like a church or a religion type thing? This just kind of happened, Their claim to fame was, we know the true name of God. Because the Catholic Church, it's always the Catholic Church, Miss Rabbit. Always. Catholic Church is it's the Jesuits overthrowing governments. It's the Catholic Church creating vampires and werewolves. It's the Catholic Church covering up the fact that Jesus was married and had children. It's, what else is Catholic? Eventually, I think we're going to find out that UFOs are actually the Catholic Church. Some crazy, wacky scheme by, I don't know, by the Holy See to do something. But it's always like, you always got those Catholic Church conspiracy theories, baby. And it changes from age to age. It's funny because it's a form of pornography in a way, almost soft porn. People couldn't, like in the old days, let's say the 1800s. There was no pornography. I mean, there was pornography underground, but people, didn't. Sex was not as out there, But you kind of get around it in weird ways, and somehow the Catholic Church was always a part of it. So, what are those monks doing in their monasteries next to the what are the nuns doing in the convents? And so you had all these books written by like Protestant ministers, and The Hotel of God by Maria Monk. Former nun, she reveals all with the Catholics, and it's usually something sexual. As I said, it was like a form of religious pornography. The priests were knocking up the nuns and then killing the babies and burying them in the crypts of the convents. That's why convents had those crypts underneath. Not to bury the dead nuns, but to bury all the murdered children of the priests. And the Knights of Columbus were storing guns and ammunition in their Knights of Columbus halls for the time when, the Pope would come over and we'd overthrow the government, So the Knights of Columbus would be on the forefront of creating a Catholic America. There's a joke. JFK was not the first Catholic to run for office. Actually, Al Smith ran, back in like the 40s. Huh? Yeah, well, even with JFK, there was, Yes. But Al Smith was funny because, as he said, Al Smith, because he was Catholic, mainly because he got destroyed. And even this whole mythology that I told you about the Knights of Columbus storing weapons and taking oaths to kill Protestants in their sleep and bring the Pope over and overthrow the government, it's actually read into the congressional record. And so it's in the official record if you want to do searches in like the Federal Register and stuff like that. And it's actually in there because some kooky congressman from somewhere thought that people need to know what's really happening with Al Smith, the Pope. And the joke is that after Al Smith, lost in a landslide for the presidency, he was running for the presidency, apparently he said a joke. He said, well, call the Pope at home to unpack his bags. At least he had a good sense of humor about it, Anyway, so the Catholic Church has removed the name of Jehovah from the Bible. Well, actually, no, because in the Hebrew, they still have the name there. They still have the vowels. We don't know what the vowels are. And if you're going to blame the Catholic Church, you're also going to have to blame the Jews, because the Jews did it first. We're just following their line, of referring to the Lord rather than God's personal name. But that was the whole claim to fame of the Jehovah's Witnesses. They know the true name of God, whereas all the other Christians do not. Well, as I just showed you, Jehovah did not come from the word at all. It's a scholarly reconstruction based on Adonai, which is a different word. Anyway, and honestly, I have to ask a witness when I find one of them again why it really matters to know the name of God. I mean, what is it going to do? Is it going to give me something more in heaven? Is it like getting into a club? You know, you got to have the right name. I don't know. I'm interested. The name, Leviticus chapter 24:16. Why don't you read that for us, Mr. Lizzo? Mr. Lizzo! Ms. Mills. Huh? You're okay. Ms. Mills, I'll come back to you. Ms. Mills! Okay, we're back to you, Mr. Lizzo. Leviticus chapter 24:16. Where's Leviticus? Well, what would you do if you didn't know? What's the first thing you should do if you don't know where something is in a book? Yeah, you can do that. How are you going to Google it without a computer, sir? How about looking at the table of contents?
That works.
I know why you're a Mets fan. Smartphone. Huh? Chapter 24. Chapter 24, Mr. Lizzo. Verse 16.
Whoever utters the name of the Lord in a curse shall be put to death. The whole community shall stone that person. Alien and native born alike must be put to death for uttering the Lord's name in a curse.
Thank you, sir. Okay? Well, that's, you know, I didn't know that just happened. That's the English translation. In the Hebrew, it says, whoever utters the name of the Lord in a curse, so on and so forth, will be stoned if you utter a curse in the name, against the name. Okay? The name. Translation doesn't totally work, but I wanted to give it to you, alright? So, it was a way to refer to God's name that the Jews, this word Hashem, and Jews still do this today. They'll talk about Hashem, which means the name in Hebrew. Ha means the. Shem means name. That's pretty easy to remember. Shem means name, baby. Shem means name. In Hebrew. Shem, name, Shem, name. Not that hard. Rhyme. Okay? They'll talk about Hashem, the name. They won't even refer to God. They won't even say the Lord. Okay? Once again, out of respect. Out of respect. So in that text it says, you know, it says the name of the Lord, whatever the Lord's name is, and at the end they add the name of God or the name of the Lord, but actually in the Hebrew text it just says full stop the name. If you curse the name, you're going to be stoned. Okay? So it's interesting that in the Greek it specifies that Jesus has the name. The name. Okay, you want to remember the context in early Christianity. We're talking about people from Judaism. Okay, so they know this language. This language resonates with them. The fact that Jesus is also now being said to have the name that is above every other name. Okay, so things that are being applied that once were like exclusively applied to just God are now being transferred to Jesus. So that at His name every knee should bend in heaven, on earth, and under the earth. Now remember, you want to pause and think about these things, because, you know, some stuff is written offhand. Some stuff, you know, Paul writes, peace be with you or something. Okay, you know, maybe there's, you know, okay, it's just a greeting. But sometimes you want to just kind of dwell on statements, because sometimes there might be more there than at first meets the eye. Okay, it's saying more about Jesus than just that, hey, you know, even His name is great because we love Him. Okay, there is a connection here with Judaism. And the fact that it says heaven, earth, and under the earth is not just meant to, oh, I watched this movie. Did you see Wrath of the Titans? Woo! It stinks! Yeah, did you see that?
Oh, that was pretty bad.
Oh, man. I'll tell you, the British film industry, they cannot do action films. We just can't. We just can't do it.
The original was pretty good.
Oh, you know another movie I just saw? Diary of the Dead by George Romero. You know, the famous. He was good. He is awful now. The guy can't direct anymore. Huh? I don't know. I mean, because he was both director and writer, huh? I think so. Oh. Weird. So you're just checking out? Do you know what we're talking about? No. You do?
Like, he's actually not a bad director. It's just that, you know, that one trick got famous and he keeps on going to the well.
No, I agree, because I saw that movie, The Happening, and I couldn't even finish watching it. It was so bad. Oh, I liked it. Oh, yeah, no. But I was thinking, Rios, about Wrath of the Titans because we go to Tartarus, which is the underworld, you know, to see Hades, the god of Hades, and stuff like that. And I guess they owed somebody, because you had some big, Bill Nye, who's a really good actor, Liam Neeson, who is okay, Ray Fiennes, who's good, yeah, Voldemort, and some other people I didn't recognize, but, really? He shouldn't be. He shouldn't be carving any niche for himself. No, I didn't see Avatar. But, anywho. That's what got me thinking about the underworld, okay? This is not just a cutesy kind of way in the Zafanti to say everywhere, you know? Everywhere! Above! Here! Below! You know? There's a reason behind this, that the fact that even at the name of Jesus, not just things on earth, but things in heaven and in the other place, the underworld. It's not really a hell in our conception, the ancient conception, but the place of the dead, even those who had died, that the name of Jesus, they are under his control. Interesting. Interesting. That's quite a claim to make for someone who is a man. You know, that now God has made him this. God has given him this name whereby everything, the whole cosmos, and not just the physical world, but even all the spiritual entities are now beneath the man Jesus. That even at its very name, their knees bend, which was a sign of worship. Genuflection means to bend your knee. Genua. Genua in Latin is a knee. You ever wonder what happened to the K? Why we don't say knee? Okay, because it became silent. But it's related languages, Latin and English, to classical Latin. Genua. Genua. Kne. Genua. To flex your knee, Mr. Pagnati. Genuflection. It is a sign of worship. Ooh. So I mean, we've got all these little things that are done for a God being applied to this Jesus. Okay. So not only men and women, creatures should bend their knee, but even spiritual entities, the things in heaven, the things under the earth, those who have died, which one would think would be under the possession of God, but now they're under the possession of Jesus as well. And here we get really a close affirmation of the divinity of Jesus. Every tongue confesses that Jesus is Lord. Okay? Yes, Lord means master. This word kurios in Greek means master. Okay, master. And it can mean, it can be used in the sense of, you know, that we say, sir, you know, excuse me, sir, okay? It can be used that way, but probably not being used that way. I don't think they're trying to say Jesus Christ is a gentleman. You know, they're saying there's something more going on there when in these hymns praising Jesus, they're also applying Adonai, which was only used of the God of Israel by Jews, which Adonai can also mean a master. But my Lord Adonai is now being applied to Jesus the Messiah. And the fact that Jesus, in this very last bit, once again, pause and think about some of these things. You know, don't just pass over them quickly. The fact that God is now called a father, which implies a child, at least one child, that God is a father. Whether spiritual or natural, that's a whole other question. Whether it's just, you know, applying it in a symbolic way, God is a father, you know, like a father loves his children, just the way Jesus is the shepherd and the way the shepherd tends and loves the sheep, takes care of the sheep, or if it means father in a natural way, that Jesus comes from God in a really close connection as like a real son from a father. Doesn't say. It just says that God is a father, which you get some implied, you get the implication of the idea of Jesus as Son of God without saying that he's the Son of God. That God is a father.